This man right here and his ensuing shenanigans are the most important quest lines in Final Fantasy XIV. I mean, just slightly behind the MSQ. Why, may you ask? Well, that is because of what these quest lines make you feel, and especially in response to what you've already felt. So, I'll explain. Grab a cup of coffee and listen in. Just as a note, there are some mild spoilers for A Realm Reborn as well as the Hildibrand questline. You have been warned. So if you've been following my journey through A Realm Reborn, you know that I've recently finished up the main story, the main quest through there. And I had been turned on to the Hildibrand story quest line. You know, the gentleman of inquiry, the inspector extraordinaire, that guy. Yeah. The quest has you taking on various foes, following him along for all his wacky adventures, and trying to deduce who this thief is. There's a thief stealing some things, and your job is to be there with him while he figures it out. The joke, however, is that basically through this entire quest line, he's an absolute buffoon. Like, he's kind of dumb, not making much sense at all, either with his actions or even his thought process. There's something up with him. He's joined by his trusty sidekick, Nashu, or Nashu, I'm going to say. And she essentially is the incredibly enthusiastic Watson to Sherlock Holmes, except she basically has the same amount of brain cells that Hildibrand does. Although I will say that she's just very innocent, and she's just there to say, "Oh, look at you." Their adventures have them going through all over of the base Eorzea and beyond, making friends and a couple of enemies all along the way. What's interesting to note about these quest lines is that they are completely optional. They are not mandatory whatsoever. Legitimately, the Warrior of the Light, you, the main character, has so little to actually do with the storyline. You help like once or twice in this entire journey, and all you are doing is just watching what's happening. You are quintessentially the fly on the wall. Like, I've joked, I've watched through most of these. I've just sat here and read the lines on the stream, and it's just been a watch party. That's all it really was. Like, there was so little that I was actually doing. I even joked and made a bowl of popcorn, and I ate the popcorn while watching the story. It's like some weird ASMR, but you get the point. And it's just a fun way to make the Warrior of the Light like a side character in this show. And boy, do they put on a show. You got evil villains, you got hilarious lines, you got wacky characters that are being put into, not to mention some of the antics that happened. There's explosions, there's really strange facial expressions. I'll get to that in a minute. There's a lot of things that just make you either laugh or chuckle and chortle. Chortle is a word, by the way. And these are all just baked into the game, where essentially you don't do a thing, except when you have to do the Manderville dance. That is a thing. You get an emote, it's weird. Just go along with it, just enjoy the ride. But not only does the questline provide some funny antics, a couple of laughs here and there, you also get a handful of other rewards. There's a couple of trials that can be unlocked via the questline. There's some minions, and apparently there's like some outfits too. There's a lot of really cool things. So it's not just the story, you actually unlock things for your account, that's pretty awesome. And as I mentioned, they really pushed the animation capabilities of your character, or of Hildibrand, I should say, with his facial expressions. There's certain things that it's almost like it got halfway done rendering, and then it just glitched and froze, and it just kind of leaves you saying, what the hell am I watching? What am I looking at? But that's also the fun of it. And also built into the storyline are larger callbacks to other various Final Fantasy games, or even within like 1.0. So for example, one of the main characters within the A Realm Reborn Hildibrand story is Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is a callback to other Final Fantasy games. He is essentially a weapons master who will duel you for your weapons. And the primary weapon that he uses is a replica version of Bradamante, which is Nail Van Darnas's spear from 1.0. That's pretty cool. That's just put into the game, just kind of as like, hey, were you paying attention? That's so much fun. And Gilgamesh, dubbed Greg, starts out along with you trying to find out who is stealing all these weapons. And when it turns out that it's just him, and Hildibrand is trying to put all this together while these are all happening in the background. It's just meant to be fun. This is all an interesting thought, but the questline does something incredibly important. And I guess all in all, it sets the framework of why Final Fantasy storytelling is really, really good. But the question remains, Why is the Hildibrand storyline the most important story quest line, we'll say, in Final Fantasy XIV? The Hildibrand quests represent something completely counter to the base game, or to the MSQ. Looking at my A Realm Reborn playthrough and my experiences there were a ton of just random, shocking twists, like almost like really negative, almost dramatic feeling adventures and story elements that were just baked into it. And it really did do a good job of making me say, well, damn, why is everything here so bleak? Even recently going through the Coils of Bahamut and finding out what actually transpired on the day of the calamity with Louisoix, like that was a big shocking turn for me, and it was almost like a somber goodbye, especially how the twins played into it. Now enter the Hildibrand questline, where you are not the main character. The main character is this guy wearing a tuxedo and he's always stuck in the sand because he keeps exploding. The reason the Hildibrand questline is the most important in Final Fantasy XIV is, of course, what it represents. It represents the other side of the coin, which is the storytelling in Final Fantasy XIV. The MSQ brings a lot of dramatic, we'll say sad overtones and seriousness, while as the Hildibrand offers the fun, engaging, lackadaisical adventure that you don't even really have to play through, but it provides that framework where, this is kind of fun. I can simply turn off my brain. I don't have to worry about all the seriousness and just eat a bag of popcorn and watch these guys fool around. It's like watching a TV show, just a TV show where you can turn off your brain. And I believe that it represents a significant step in the Final Fantasy XIV universe building or story building, however you wish to call it, because if Final Fantasy didn't have this kind of funny antics or we'll say shenanigans, I like that word, then it would just provide a very dramatic and serious game, which I don't know necessarily if the Final Fantasy XIV series, the MMO, would be as popular as it is if that were just the case, if it were just a dark kind of, serious toned game. Like, even coming from my Guild Wars 2 background, like, I didn't even really feel that the characters in Guild Wars 2 were all that memorable, and I played that game for a number of years. I even raved about how great the Guild Wars 2 story is. Now I have some type of comparison. Like, there really wasn't a laugh story. I can't even remember a laugh story really throughout World of Warcraft. There wasn't as much emphasis put onto that. It was less engaging, I guess is the best way to put it. Coming into Final Fantasy XIV, I knew the story was going to be important. Everyone has literally said, you got to read the story. You got to do it because it sets up the framework for everything else, and it's a huge payoff down the road. And I'm starting to see that. I'm starting to believe, as it were, enter the Matrix quote. And I wouldn't have realized through my initial playthrough how much of an emotional break I would need from the MSQ just to do the Hildibrand storyline. Now, to be sure, the Hildibrand questlines are completely optional. They are not necessary. You don't have to do it to enjoy the game or anything like that. But my adventures with the Inspector Extraordinaire has been fantastic. And actually one of the highlights of the community was like, you got to do this. This is so much fun. You got to try it. And I did, and I haven't regretted it. Of course, now I must say that this is just a Realm Reborn Hildibrand quests. I know that there are more Hildibrand quests in the other expansions. I think all the way up until like Shadowbringers, he isn't there, but he comes back in Endwalker. Someone was telling me that. But I think that is really important because I've only spent like 4 or 5 hours on the actual Hildibrand quests this go around. And it's been a great almost palate cleanser leading into Heavensward and going through the quest line leading up to Heavensward. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in Heavensward, but I'm guaranteeing that there's going to be some type of emotional shot, gut punch, whatever you want to call it. I know that's going to be there. That has to be there because it's Final Fantasy, and that's kind of what I'm expecting. But the Hildibrand questline has done its part. It has simply given me a rebound emotion of happiness after the A Realm Reborn seriousness. And it's prepared me for the next brick of emotional damage that I will be taking going into the next Final Fantasy expansion. And they seem like they're all positioned just after you finish the main expansion story, the main MSQ for the expansion. So that's really good. You get another little laugh, a palate cleanse, as it were, and then you jump back into more shenanigans. So I have to say I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I do believe that it's very, very important, if not one of the most important things that you can do in Final Fantasy XIV, because it breaks that overtone. And absolutely, recommend it. I recently actually, as mentioned, played through the Coils of Bahamut, and I was absolutely shocked, and it changed my perspective of Final Fantasy going from a good MMO to a great MMO, and you can see that video right here. Otherwise, stay caffeinated, folks.